Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's always my privilege and blessing to join together with you, and looks like we might have liftoff for this week's broadcast, which is fantastic news compared to some of the battles that we've been having. So, thank you all who have kept us in prayer and are standing in faith these days. And I know that there are many things that we're all paying attention to out there. So I just want to encourage you, every single one of you. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for encouraging. It's a very important thing to do in this hour is to encourage. I'm going to take it for granted that you all can hear me, or I'd be hearing, I can't hear you out there. So I'm going to I'm going to presume that we've got audio out there to all of you. And for those of you that are joining us, maybe for the first time, thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. We do these each week. We don't do them every day. We don't do them every hour. We don't do them every story. And there's a good reason for that. One of the things that can happen when you get too much input, which they know this, is you become full of anxiety. And we are commanded in the scripture to be anxious for nothing. And so that is not a healthy thing to do. On the other hand, complete disconnection is not good either. And so we need to be in a good balance. And so we found a good pace to go by. We have a website where we place all of the stories that we'll be sharing with you, not only today, but all the weeks that we do these. And of course, we want you to be informed without being overwhelmed. So we'd like to let you know from the 10,000-foot view some of the things that are happening right now, how they might affect your world, and how they fit into scriptural prophecy, right? Because we are commanded to keep an eye on the scripture and keep an eye on events so that we can see the day approaching. How will we see the day approaching if we're not paying attention to scriptural prophecy, worldwide events, and we're not caring one for another? How will we know then? We wouldn't. So we would be one of those who would be abiding in the dark, and we would be caught unawares or as a thief in the night. And so let me encourage you not to let that be you, but instead to do as the scripture says, to be sober and vigilant in this hour. So sobriety has been important. I know there's been several stories that we've covered throughout the last year that have really been beneficial to me personally, not just in terms of general understanding and general awareness, but things that were going to impact our lives and things that have affected our health or what have you. So very important that we keep ourselves aware, informed, but again, not overwhelmed. And with that, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story is, ominous. We're seeing more and more saber rattling as positioning occurs. And remember the left-right dichotomy that they continue to promote. And so we are seeing the setup of the teams for a conflict on the left and on the right-hand side. And China is actively arming Putin's war in Ukraine, which who's arming Ukraine. I don't have to tell you who's on what sides. And so what does that mean? Well, that means an axis is forming, okay? China is actively arming Putin's war in Ukraine. The UK confirms for the first time as Xi and Putin cement axis of evil alliance. So when they start doing this, name calling, branding in the media, this is the same thing they did during World War II. In fact, it's the same words. They use the words axis of evil. And so depending upon which side of that conflict you were on, the other guys were the most wicked things and the most evil things. And so you got to be really careful with the propaganda in this hour because it's going to get thick. Spies tracked lethal aid from China to Russia and into Ukraine, Grant Schaap revealed on Wednesday. And so he said intel reports were a significant development and warned we should be concerned. Schaap says it blows open China's claim to be a handbrake on Putin's Ukraine slaughter. He told the London Defense Conference, U.S. and British defense intelligence can reveal that lethal aid is now flowing from China to Russia and into Ukraine. And so the lines are being drawn, the demarcation lines are being drawn, the Mason-Dixon line is being drawn. You know what I'm saying? And despite efforts to change that direction, this seems to be and continues to be the theatrical performance going on in front of us. And so this is very ominous for this time period that we're in, as we see more and more wars and rumors of wars. And as a matter of fact, now there's chatter, and so we're going to have to listen to this now for 4 or 5 months. Are Russia and North Korea planning an October surprise that aids Trump? And of course, that's the other alignment thing that you're going to be seeing, the narrative spinning that there's some kind of an alignment, and it includes presidential candidate Donald Trump. And so this is one of those interesting twists. And again, you're in a propaganda war, you're in a mind war. So just know that. Are Russia and North Korea planning an October surprise that aids Trump? U.S. officials are bracing for Pyongyang to take military actions close to the U.S. presidential election, possibly at the urging of Vladimir Putin. Okay, so once again, they've got this all down, man. They got the inside track, and they're telling you, exactly what's going on, kind of like they did years ago when they were telling you, Russia, Russia, Russia. So it's, again, the same media with the same spin. The Biden administration is increasingly concerned that the intensifying military alliance between Russia, President Vladimir Putin, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un could vastly expand Pyongyang's nuclear capability and increase tensions in the Asian Pacific region, which the reason why, of course, they want to, this is a major concern, is because, of course, of Taiwan. And the region already has a tinderbox there. The last thing you need is multiple fronts opening. And despite the illusion that the militaries like to give of their invincibility, the reality is a little different on the ground. And so, we have to be really concerned about how this escalates. Now, today we're seeing a report, this just came out, that North Korea had some kind of mishap. It looks like they had a rocket blast of a spy satellite that exploded in midair. And of course, the West is calling this a humiliating failure for launch for Kim Jong-un. And if this person is as unstable as you all in the news media want us to believe, poking him is probably not a really good idea. A North Korean rocket carrying its second spy satellite reportedly exploded midair today in a dramatic setback for Kim Jong-un, which, again, these personality types just double down. So all you're going to do is fuel the fire by poking fun at the panda bear. That's not going to work. That's going to get them more and more upset, which, of course, I think is the full intention, right? So, that's what the reality is they're trying to make that happen. And there's a lot of hostility in this region, and not all of it is going to be, it's not going to be easy to assuage some of this hostility. China holds a Taiwan war game. And, again, there's a lot of hot blood there, and it's Val's blood of independent forces. So this is, a big deal. This was just this last week. China on Thursday encircled Taiwan with naval vessels and military aircraft in war games as it vowed the blood of independence forces on the self-ruled island would flow. The 2 days of drills are part of an escalating campaign of intimidation by China that has seen it carry out a series of large-scale military exercises around Taiwan in recent years. And so you're seeing more drills. Drills come after Lai Ching-te was sworn in as Taiwan's new president this week and made an inauguration speech that China denounced as a confession of independence. And so, again, you're seeing there's still a lot of hostility in this part of the world, which I do believe there are certain forces in order to cover their retreat and to cover some of the nefarious behavior that would otherwise be front page news. There's a bunch of distraction that's going on right now. And again, a lot of demonization. And so we take all these stories with a grain of salt because we want to look for trends over long periods of time and not allow ourselves to be impulse manipulated, because again, we know that that's a lot of how the propaganda works and has worked over the last few hundred years anyway, that we can track back. And so now we're hearing reports that China is building AI chatbots to control thoughts, right? So this was another piece of news that kept coming out, and we see again this being put back into the narrative that China builds Xi Jinping an AI chatbot, and is supposed to control thoughts, politics, and actions of citizens, while U.S. rivals are blocked. China has reportedly immortalized President Xi Jinping and his values in the form of artificial intelligence-powered chatbot. So this is just going to get weirder and weirder as we go. Just kind of warning you guys ahead of time. The world we're going into is a strange world. It's going to get wilder. Okay, it's going to get wilder and wilder. Speaking of wild, one of the things that we warned about for the last couple of weeks was, we've looked at this over the last year and a half, how that countries are executing their retaliation for war differently. And we saw the International Criminal Court threaten to issue arrest warrants for heads of state. And in the case that we were looking at, of course, was the case of Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, apparently that's getting a lot more serious. So this is, again, a very different way to affect world events, which is a very interesting shift away from the kinds of conflicts we thought we would see right now. And Germany has outright said, Germany was an ally sending ammunition. All right. So this is a very interesting shift of position. Okay. Germany says it will arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he sets foot in the country, following ICC call to charge him with war crimes as Israel becomes increasingly isolated over Gaza. Netanyahu has condemned comparisons between the Israeli government and Hamas. Israel's ambassador to Berlin claims the ICC prosecutor has completely lost his moral compass in the wake of the arrest warrants. Germany will arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if he enters the country amid allegations of war crimes by the International Criminal Court. And while there are many countries, not a lot of countries, there's probably less than 10, I think, that don't recognize the International Criminal Court, the vast majority of the world does. So there's a whole lot of countries that he suddenly cannot go to for fear of arrest. So that's not a small matter. And I do, again, believe that this is affecting, which I think is the intention. This is affecting battlefield decisions and conflict decisions on a different scale and in a different way, because now individuals can be directly and immediately, and it's not even taking that long, be held accountable for their actions, right? Or at least the perception of their actions. So again, it's alleged. So, he's innocent until proven guilty. But nevertheless, this doesn't look good, right? And it certainly begs questions as to why a prosecutor would do that, would demand that. And so this is very interesting. At the same time, we're seeing the pressure coming, something that we expected to see. And again, this comes from the scripture which talks about dividing the land for a spoil. And here we see the Palestinian state is being recognized by several European countries. Okay, so they made a declaration and they are recognizing Norway, Ireland, and Spain have recognized a Palestinian state in a historic move. Irish Prime Minister Simone Harris said on Wednesday it was coordinated with Spain and Norway, an historic important day for Palestine. All right, Palestine. So this is a very interesting development. Never in the history of Earth has there ever been a nation known as Palestine. This was actually a name used by the Romans. And so this is a very interesting time period that we're in, and we're watching this thing completely unfold right in front of our face. And so in the meantime, the situation in Eastern Europe with Ukraine and with Russia continues to heat up, and we're seeing momentum clearly building, according to this article, for NATO troops in Ukraine. So they're pushing hard for this reality. The French-led push for deeper NATO involvement inside Ukraine borders is making headway. So this guy, Macron, he's doing everything he can. They can't quite give this thing up. They're not spending billions for nothing. They're trying to preserve something. They're trying to protect what they already have, and is making headway with European allies. A spokesperson for President Emmanuel Macron's political party said. Benjamin Haddad, a member of parliament for Macron's Renaissance Party and considered a leading voice in French foreign policy discussions, told Newsweek on the sidelines of the Narti Meri conference in Estonia last week that NATO and the European Union need to, quote, turn the tables, end quote, on Russian President Vladimir Putin after more than 2 years of full-scale war. And what did we just hear about in our first top story? That it is now out that China is backing Putin. So if you've got NATO getting its dander up to go, really hard against Russia, at the same time that it's becoming public that China has Russia's back, that's a real obvious left-right war. I mean, that's right in your face. And so we're seeing just an increase of hostility. And again, this is an incredibly dangerous time period for the world, for everyone, no matter where in the earth you are. And the White House was warning Israel not to withhold Palestinian funds over the European recognition. So the White House on Wednesday warned Israel not to withhold funding intended for the Palestinian Authority in retaliation for decisions by 3 European countries to recognize a state of Palestine. And so, of course, they're getting ahead of Israel's retaliation. Israel does have a history of retaliatory things, so it's not outlandish to feel the need to warn them, and clearly that is what's happening. And so, again, you're in an election year in the West. You got a divided base. You got an existential threat, as they call their opposing candidate. This is looking more and more like a fall collapse is going to be their only out in order to survive the scrutiny that will then come. Because again, why do they use war? They use war as the great eraser, economic eraser. They use it for settling scores. They use it for hiding information, evidence, whatever, right? There's lots of reasons for wars, and most of them are not good. Just saying. And speaking of war, just again, news reports coming out Just in the last 24 hours, that Israel strike on Rafah has killed dozens. And of course, Hamas fired rockets at Tel Aviv. So they're just going back and forth. And I don't even know what the point of the whole rocket fire is, because the rockets are looking like they're just fireworks. They look like they don't do anything. And then people die. At least 35 people were killed. And now their rockets are real. Okay. At least 35 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a camp for displaced people in Rafah on Sunday, according to the Gaza Health Ministry and Palestinian medics, shortly after Hamas fired a barrage of rockets at Tel Aviv for the first time in months. This is so sad to me. Gaza authorities and medics say the attack hit a displacement camp that had been designated by Israel as a safe zone. Didn't we just talk about this? How they set up an area, they call it a safe zone. The next thing you know, people are dying there. The Israeli Defense Forces said the bombardment hit a militant compound in the area, killing 2 senior Hamas officials, which, by the way, I'm starting to realize that they throw in, like, oh, we killed a couple of terrorists, or we killed senior officials or whatever, as again another form of, it seems to me, and it's just my opinion, but it seems like a bit of cover story for the collateral damage that gets considerable. Okay. As a matter of fact, here's a good example of exactly that. Here it was so bad they couldn't even run from it. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu accepts tragic mistake after dozens killed in Gaza City. Distressing images and details. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said an investigation is ongoing following a strike that killed dozens of Palestinians in Gaza. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has acknowledged that there were How's that for wild? My. Did that get crazy or what? Welcome to my world. That's just out of nowhere decided to reboot. Just out of nowhere. And no warning, no indicator, no nothing. So, welcome to my world. Isn't that wild? That is wild. It's wild to me. I'm going to try to bring back up everything that I had before. Restore previous session. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Appreciate your patience. And I imagine I'm a little choppy. I'm feeling a little choppy. This is crazy. This is the most warfare I think I've experienced direct. Whew, man. In quite a minute. So it happens, Can't get too upset. Can't let it bother you too much. Got to stay calm. There's no point in really getting all upset about it anyway. I laugh at them and I think, so you're gonna run the world with this, eh? You're gonna rule the whole world with this tech. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Then again, we can also take it that we were just over the target. So again, as we were saying before we were rudely interrupted, they are admitting that this was a tragic mistake. Netanyahu said, despite our utmost efforts not to harm innocent civilians last night, there was a tragic mistake. We are investigating the incident and will obtain a conclusion because this is our policy. And Israel claimed it struck a Hamas installation and killed 2 senior militants. But again, like I said, guys, there's a new way that this is being prosecuted, right? So when they see these kinds of things are coming across the wires, if you will, this just fuels those that are on the other side to push even harder for prosecutions and persecutions of those that they believe are doing some very serious things. And so again, this is going to ratchet up. This isn't going away anytime soon. And while they're doing that, while they've got this sort of war scenario, and you got the China-Taiwan scenario along with Rocket Man jumping in there, they keep stoking this scenario where, of course, Putin is, of course, the bad guy, and now he's launched space weapons while his forces carry out nuke drills near Ukraine. So again, just more of the same. The Kremlin sent the satellite called Cosmos 2576 into low Earth orbit, which the Pentagon said is likely capable of launching attacks against their own. Brigadier General Pat Ryder said it is the same orbit as a U.S. government satellite, USA 314, adding that the country is on standby to protect its interests. So again, those that are trying desperately to get a superpower war aren't giving up just yet. I don't know how successful they'll be in this effort, but I do believe that they're going to continue to try to do these things. And so, and so interestingly, right, you at the same time that they're issuing this apology that, mistakes are being made, you got to remember that just the other day, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to halt its Rafah offensive. The court also ordered Israel to open the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza to allow in humanitarian aid, and said Israel must provide access to the besieged territory for investigators and report back on its progress within a month. So everything is now setting up to really put pressure on the Israeli state, because now on top of defying this order, then they have to come out and say, oh, horrible mistakes were made, poor civilians died, which is exactly what this order was trying to prevent. And so this is going to get dicey, folks, as we go forward from here. And so I bring this up just so that you're aware of it, so that you're not caught by surprise and then thrown into a anxiety attack, as these things come out. And it's not just Ukraine. The European nations and the peoples of the European nations are really starting to get very animated about, I would imagine, taking their countries back. And so here you're seeing reports from Sweden that experts warn Sweden is on brink of civil war as country gripped by migrant violence. Okay, so this is huge. Spiraling gun crime, marauding migrant gangs, and fascist violence, how Sweden became Europe's crime capital. I don't really want to get into this because a lot of the crimes are really bad toward women. So let me just say it like that. It's been a very bad crime spree. And at the same time, coming up just recently, just in the last few days, Ireland had a huge march through Ireland. I just saw footage of it, and I actually had it queued up, but we got all messed up today. But I had footage of Ireland's walk, and they had quite a few people on the street. So we're seeing the European nations, the Western nations, the actual people on the ground are voicing their displeasure with the policies that put them in the situation that they're in today. And so I do believe that there's going to be more and more of this type of conflict as we go, because people are starting to stand up and say, wait a minute. Something about this plan I'm not real big on. Okay, and so it's getting interesting. Here's another one that story that, shifting gears a little bit, but a different kind of warfare. This is a bit of gaslighting, because we've known since the 80s that drinking water has been a major issue. And but now recently we're seeing more and more sort of mea culpa admission, acknowledgement reports, drinking water warning issued nationwide, which is a very big deal, because that's not something that normally happens, right? So the Environmental Protection Agency issued an enforcement alert Monday, urging water utility systems to take immediate action to protect the nation's drinking water from cyber attacks. According to the EPA, recent federal inspections revealed that 70% of U.S. water systems inspected do not fully comply with requirements in the Safe Drinking Water Act. Okay. And again, the cyber thing, I think, is a little bit of the smokescreen for, again, the mea culpa, because more and more people are realizing what's in the water, right? So you're seeing more and more reporting that's coming out to sort of blow the whistle on that. And the earth is responding. And folks, this is one of the things that the scripture warned us about, that the earth would vomit out its inhabitants, right? And so don't be surprised to see volcanic, earthquake, tornado, hurricane activity that is reflective of the earth reacting. As a matter of fact, here's a story. The seismic storm hits Italy's Campi Flegrei super volcano with strongest earthquake in 40 years. So the earth is reacting to what's going on. A 4.4 magnitude earthquake struck Italy's Campi Flegrei super volcano Monday evening, causing mild damage in the town of Pozzuoli. The epicenter. Italy's got such great names, right? The epicenter, and as far away as the city of Naples, some 20 kilometers, 12 miles away, according to Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology. My goodness, I got a little twisted tongue going on tonight. All right, so We're seeing again more and more activity that is, you know, is it all natural? I don't know. It's going to be categorized under, weather or natural disasters, but you got to kind of wonder, what's really going on. Meanwhile, we got disasters of our own making, with our foolish planning and foolish policies. So yeah, everybody get an electric car because we got the power grid for it, right? Not Texas power demand to break May's record in heat wave on Friday. So again, the demand just continues to go up for power. And again, this is an area that we personally believe very, very strongly that every camp and every family has to make alternative plans. Power use in Texas was on track to break the record for the month of May on Friday for a second time this week and could top that again over the Memorial Day weekend as homes and businesses crank up air conditioners to escape a heat wave. And so we're going to continue to see more and more electrical outages, and nothing emasculates more than a power outage. And they know that. And so they continue to use it to great effect, with that very intention to continue to remind everyone of just your vulnerability. And you say, Peter, how can you know that for sure? Because if they didn't want you to have that feeling, there would be batteries between you and the power plant, keeping you from feeling any outages for the last 50 years. So the fact that you are given direct feeds and therefore affected by every blip is intentional, just so you know. And we've got major temperature issues that are adding to that. So Texas is my family lives in Texas. I love them, but man, oh man, then they tell me the stories of how hot it's getting. I just amazed at the heat that they have in Texas. And so stand by. It's supposed to be a warmer than normal summer to boot. So this ought to be good. It's getting so hot that it's killing wildlife. Wildlife made for the heat. Watch this. It's so hot in Mexico, howler monkeys are falling dead from the trees. At least 83 howler monkeys were found dead in the Gulf state of Tabasco. Okay? It's so hot in Mexico, the howler monkeys are falling dead from the trees. At least 138 of the mid-sized primates, who are known for their roaring vocal calls, were found dead in the Gulf state of Tabasco since May 16th, according to the Biodiversity Conservation of the Usumacinta group. Others were rescued by residents, including 5 that were rushed to a local veterinarian who battled to save them. They arrived in critical condition, with dehydration and fever, and they were as limp as rags, and they had heat stroke. So, and again, this is a species that lives wild in Mexico, right? So I mean, these animals are used to this weather, this heat. I mean, that's just normal, right? But it is of such a level that, and something has changed, because I saw a video of cows going in the shade. They wouldn't even sit in the sunlight. So there is definitely something different going on right now, that wasn't going on before. And some think that there's something has changed in the sky, something has changed with the sun. That's entirely possible. We're seeing certain things manifesting in the earth that are definitely getting our attention. We've already discussed this before, but they keep putting this back in the narrative. So whenever they repeat something in the narrative over and over again, guys, they want you to know. Shattered towns pick up the pieces as 2024 stacks up to be the most active tornado season since 2017. Okay, well, that's interesting. That was 7 years ago. Okay, so there's that. The town of Greenfield, Iowa, resembled a war zone on Thursday, with uprooted trees and overturned cars in all directions and splintered wood that was once part of homes and businesses. Residents searched for belongings and family heirlooms in the rubble left by a devastating tornado that ripped through the community, killing 4 people. So we're going to keep seeing more and more of these types of reports as we keep having more and more deadly windstorms. 5 dead, at least 35 hurt as tornadoes rip through Iowa, officials say. So here's another one, Greenfield, Iowa. And so again, we're going to keep seeing more and more reports of these tornadoes. I believe that we're going to keep that this summer is going to be a summer filled with natural disasters. Here again, we're seeing these. We continue to see these narrative drops, one after another. Florida's Osceola County warns residents. By the way, extremely warm in Florida, like unusually warm in Florida all of a sudden. Florida's Osceola County warns residents to prepare now for unexpected active hurricane season. Get ready now. After the devastation from Hurricane Ian in 2022, Osceola County is preparing for a hurricane season unlike any other and warning residents to do that. Unlike any other? They've had some pretty bad ones, and they're saying unlike any other? Unlike any other. Worse than them all. Well, that sounds great. That sounds fantastic. Who else is excited? Wow. NOAA is issuing its highest ever early forecast for the coming hurricane season. Okay. Well, thanks for the heads up. In the highest hurricane season forecast they have ever released in May, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration forecasters said Thursday that the coming months may be exceptionally busy. The forecast for named storms, hurricanes, and major hurricanes is the highest NOAA has ever issued for the May outlook. So we got some unprecedented potential storms and devastating natural disasters to go with the wars and rumors of wars. Okay? And these things continue to keep happening. I mean, I keep seeing these reports, guys. I know you guys are seeing this stuff because, we just can't ignore it. It just comes across your screen or what have you. Deadly storms sweep through South, leaving trail of destruction in Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. So you got Texas getting attacked, Arkansas getting attacked, Oklahoma getting attacked, Iowa, Missouri, right? I mean, it just left and right. You're seeing more and more of these effects. And some may believe, and they do try and attach it to the sun's activity, right? So here we go again with new sunspot regions emerge. Strong solar flares are being recorded. Okay, so now there's just more and more attention being played to the effects that the sun and the atmosphere is having, and I don't know. I think they're drawing a lot of attention away from maybe what they're really doing, and so I think we may see some revelations come out in the near term that will give us some clarity in that area. But in the meantime, it's still wise for us to know that we are moving into and already are in a season of natural disasters. So it is wise for you to be prepared in the event of a natural disaster that hits you. Because again, nobody expects a hurricane. Nobody expects a flood. Nobody expects a tornado until it shows up. Nobody expects it until it shows up. So every single solitary victim of a tornado or a hurricane or a flood or a thunderstorm, the flash flooding, every single victim didn't think it was going to happen to them. Not a single exception. None of them were prepared for that. They're all caught by surprise. That is the reason why they perished. Okay? And so when you see victims of these things, just know that. Just think none of them were thinking that was going to happen that day. And then it just did. So just realize that, because I don't know where you are, and there's all kinds of things happening, and it has never happened before until it happens. Okay. Uh, Now they're continuing. Remember, this is something else that we've been watching. This particular narrative, I'm being careful about talking about it because this may be the reason why we're getting so much warfare, because we're pointing some of these things out, right? But look at this, folks. Now they're saying a child is confirmed as the first case in Australia. A child. Talk about, okay, we got to pull on some heartstrings now. A child has been confirmed as the first case of this in Australia. A child contracted that while in India and fell ill in March this year, according to Victorian health officials. So once again, we would ask the scientific questions. Which lab has isolated this particular virus that can then be tested and verified by other labs? And that's usually when you get the crickets. So a lot of this, again, is being used to manipulate and to scare, because by putting you in a fear matrix, they then can roll out other measures and other things that they would like to do. For example, they made a lot of effort to get people online and sort of really introducing the nations to their obsolescence, right? Now we're taking a step closer to the book of Revelation prophecies about not being able to buy or sell, and with J.P. Morgan and MasterCard on board with biometric breakthroughs, you may soon start paying with your face. Your face. Okay? So hand or forehead. Biometric payment options are becoming more common in the U.S., such as Apple Face ID, enabling app purchases, and Amazon's introduction to pay by palm technology in stores, and financial firms from JP Morgan to MasterCard embracing the technology. So what's crazy about this, guys, is not only are you dealing with MasterCard and JP Morgan, but what you may not know is JP Morgan is critical to the infrastructure of not Bitcoin, but the other one. I forget. But anyway, Ethereum. And so they have their hands in a lot of different places that are, I think, designed to get that matrix built. And I'm not sure, again, how well they'll pull it off. And we can see how reliable the technology actually is. But nevertheless, it doesn't mean they don't go for it, and that this isn't moving us in the direction of fulfilling what was prophesied to come. And so it certainly makes us wonder. And again, they can't implement this stuff without AI, right? And so they slowly made everybody more and more comfortable with just AI being part of the conversation. AI is at the table. AI is coming to dinner. AI will be at the Hollywood dinner, right? AI will be here. AI will be on your website. AI will be on your search engine results. AI is everywhere. And what they are not realizing, and what people aren't realizing, is that AI relies on mass surveillance. Okay. That's how AI works. AI is a snoop. It's nosy. It is breaking all kinds of laws. All right. As it snoops on people without any legal basis or foundation to do so, and gathering information. So you're embracing mass surveillance. The AI tools that crunch numbers, generate text and videos, and find patterns in data rely on mass surveillance and exercise concerning control over our lives, the boss of encrypted messaging app Signal told AFP on Thursday, pushing back against the unquestioning enthusiasm at Viva Tech in Paris, Europe's top startup conference where industry players vaunt the merits of their products. Meredith Whitaker said concerns about surveillance and those about AI, sorry about that, were two framings of the same thing. And you see, when you start talking about surveillance, without the AI help, they wouldn't find certain things. So, on the positive side of that, if you're, trying desperately to find your child at the amusement park, and AI can scroll through the video hyper fast to find, that child, that you would say, man, positive use of this technology. But unfortunately, it's that's the way it's sold. It's sold on its most virtuous benefits, and those usually cover its most villainous vices. Okay, so it's sold to us on virtuous benefit to cover villainous vices. It's just the way it works. And again, they're just going to continue to use a scare tactic to keep this in the narrative to move the needle forward, so they have something to prod the cattle with, pardon the pun, which is just, it's almost too laughable, but it's true. It's you're using this to move the people. A farm worker who had regular exposure to infected livestock. How do we know they were infected? I don't know, because this guy says so on NBC News. Recovered from mild symptoms. At least 51 herds in 9 states have reported infections. And once again, the scientific question to ask is, where is the lab that has isolated this virus, that it can then be compared and looked at by independent labs? And so again, they can say anything in print and it sounds official, and they know that. Okay, so we need to be very careful about some of these things that we're reading about. And we are seeing serious pushback from the center of the country. Remember, we saw Tennessee pushing back with their legislation about anything being sprayed in their skies, which I personally believe, my personal opinion, that any spraying of a sky is an act of war. And so I'm sure I'd love to hear from some of my fellow military veterans out there. What are your thoughts on that? I personally think it's an act of war. I mean, isn't that one of the war tactics used in Vietnam? Wasn't Agent Orange and spraying the jungles? Wasn't that part of warfare in Vietnam? Well, then how is that different? How are we making a difference here? Which, by the way, how did you spray the Agent Orange if you can't modify planes to spray things, right? I mean, it's just utterly ridiculous that we even have to have that conversation. And so Tennessee, we saw, said, nope, no flying, none of this stuff's going to go on in our skies. And we saw a video where a guy was saying, we can't find any trails. Weren't those supposed to be naturally occurring from just air traffic? And of course, they blew that. Well, Louisiana is also making the news. And this is a very interesting story. Louisiana legislator approves a bill classifying the abortion pill. And this came up in a conversation where I was talking with my sister Octavia, how this was being used to trigger birth. And so this was an amazing revelation that it was being used for this purpose, right? And so it's now being classified as a controlled and dangerous substance. And I would say, based on the testimony that I heard from one person that went through literally a life-threatening experience, I would have to say that they should be classified as deadly drugs. It is only by the grace of Elohim that we still have our sister. And so I do believe that some of these things that they've come up with are horribly bad. And I do think that we're seeing more and more of those that are affected by these things, who bought into these lies. Unfortunately, you want to talk about drinking the Kool-Aid. Okay, drinking the tap water. We could just we could just call it drinking the tap water. Okay, some people are still drinking the tap water, and it's affecting us in every area. And again, I do believe that you're seeing a stranglehold that is being put on the vast majority of people, and it's really affecting everybody. Even the wealthy are being affected by it, so it doesn't seem to matter. But I mean, when 80% of the people, check this out, guys. I know I'm a little over time, but we did have a break there, so just hang in there with me. Did you know that 80% of Americans now consider fast food a luxury due to high prices? First of all, I know that you guys are all laughing because I know that in this crowd, at least, most of you haven't had a piece of fast food. You can't even remember how long ago because you have figured out a long time ago how that isn't even food. Exactly. So you're not even trying to play with this stuff, right? You're not even trying to participate with this. And yeah, they're basically reporting that 80% of people are unable to eat fast food because they consider it a luxury and they're struggling financially. So remember, we did a story recently about the restaurants really getting hit, and now fast food is getting severely affected. And again, it's just where the rubber meets the road. It's where people contact the economy the most consistently, and where they're going to be impacted by major changes. So I saw a report that a family of four needed an additional $11,000 a year for the same amount of food from just 2 years ago. So the difference for a family of four from just 2 years ago to today for the same amount of food was $11,000. All right. So that's like $900 a month. Just to put that into perspective, in addition to your budget. So it's like 2 years ago, somebody coming up to you and saying, in 2 years, you know what you just paid for a monthly amount of groceries? Add $900. That's what you're going to have to pay for the same groceries, for the exact same. So if they would have told you that, in 2022, you would call that a financial collapse. You would say, my money is dropping in value like a rock. And you would be right. So it is being hidden from you just how badly we are being hit. And it eventually will not be hideable. So it's at that point that society disintegrates into chaos. And one part of the world that demonstrates this very clearly is the Caribbean. So here we're seeing two cases. One, and you guys may be hearing about reports coming out of Cuba that they have finally hit the end of their banking system has finally collapsed. So they're going to have to go to something else to run their socialist government. And Haiti, if you guys remember, we've been reporting about the Haitian collapse, and this has really gotten bad. And of course, this is sadly the persecution we knew would eventually come for all believers in Messiah. And here we have 3 Christian missionaries from Oklahoma, from an Oklahoma-based group that was killed in Haiti. And this was just this last week. 3 Christian missionaries from missions in Haiti were shot and killed in an ambush by a gang in Haiti. The missionaries were taking shelter. They were not out in the streets. They were not confronting. They were not proselytizing. So they weren't out there, like having a meeting or anything. They were just hiding out in a house when gang members began shooting at the residents at about 9 p.m. And the group said in 2 Facebook posts, months of gang violence in Haiti have forced the government into retreat. And so, again, guys, this is a horrible foreboding of things to come. It warns us of the tremendous potential for human societal degradation. I think sometimes we forget just how much our society does hang on a thread, and we take that for granted, and we shouldn't. And so this is again a space of time, a space to repent, a space for movement that I believe Elohim has granted for those of you that are awakening, for those that are coming into his name, coming into the household of faith, joining together in the assembly of the redeemed, being set apart, giving you a chance to coalesce and join together. But make no mistake about it, we are being set up for fire. We are being set up for utter burning with fire, Revelation 18. And so know that these things that he's doing and exposing in the earth are for your benefit. Many of the things that are coming out, many of the revelations that we're getting are indicating to us just how much corruption there was in the world, just how much wickedness there was. I believe that's why they're fighting these wars. I think that's what they're trying to cover up. And I don't believe it's going to work. And I think it's because of you. I am grateful for all of you who continue to intercede, to pray for your brothers and sisters, for one another. Your prayers for light, your prayers for exposure of the deeds of darkness are being heard. And I believe that we are seeing the tide turn like never before. This is why I do believe that's going to get nasty, because the scripture tells us, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, knowing he hath but a short time. So we know that the scripture prophesies a time when he is no longer able to pull off his overall air maneuvers, can't control the air, kicked out of the heavenlies, is now relegated to earth maneuvers, very carnal, very flesh, and it's such that the scripture says, woe to the inhabitants, right? So Mashiach warns that this is a time so great that unless those days be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So we who are set apart, who have our eyes open, who are awake in this hour, you are those who are ahead. This is why you must conduct yourself with wisdom, to operate in set apart places, in peaceful habitations where Elohim is setting his people. And maybe you're one of them, or maybe you're making your way there as Elohim is leading you. Let me encourage you because he is separating his people away from those places of judgment. And so we're going to continue to see more and more reports, continue to see more and more disasters, things that are coming down the road. And this summer is looking like it's going to be a dangerous one. So my prayer for all of you is to find your fold, be found faithful, and finish well before him. Well, that's it for tonight. That's our report. I'm grateful we were able to finish it up. I pray that it has been an encouragement and a blessing to you. Thank you so much for those of you that hung in there with us. Thank you for those who've subscribed to our channel. Some of you had to resubscribe, I understand. So thank you for being diligent about that. We appreciate you all. We're grateful for your support, your love, and your prayers. And on that note, we'll let you go. May Elohim bless each and every one of you. Good night.